Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 is quietly turning into one of the most ambitious finales in gaming history. And recent interviews with director Naoki Hamaguchi have made Square Enix's approach to this project much clearer. For a long time, fans had a lot of questions, and most of them were shaped by fear. Will the game be shorter? Will the story feel rushed? Or will the third game just be a slightly altered version of the previous two? The latest statements show that most of these concerns are largely unfounded. Before we start, I want to say something short but important. The channel has been dealing with serious algorithm issues lately, and YouTube isn't recommending our videos like it used to. So if you like the video, subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. It would be an incredibly big support for keeping this channel alive. Your support truly means a lot. If you're ready, let's begin. Especially after the release of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, there were intense discussions about pacing, that is, story flow and overall game length. Some players felt that certain sections dragged on longer than necessary, which naturally led to the question, will content be cut in Part 3? Hamaguchi responded to these criticisms very clearly. According to him, Rebirth's content was not unnecessarily stretched. Rather, modern players consume so many games and so much content that they've become used to everything ending faster. At this point, there's one word Hamaguchi repeatedly emphasizes: concise. When the director used this word for Part 3, many people assumed it meant a shorter game or a cut-down story. Hamaguchi openly says this interpretation is completely wrong. The goal isn't to reduce content, but to make the pacing feel right. In other words, players shouldn't feel like the story is dragging or stalling as they progress, while still preserving the depth that defines Final Fantasy VII. To understand this mindset, it's important to look at some past design decisions. For example, during the development of Final Fantasy VII Remake, the team seriously discussed shrinking Cloud's iconic Buster Sword to make it feel more realistic. The logic was simple. Swinging such a massive sword with one hand could break immersion. But when this idea was put on the table, they realized something critical. The Buster Sword isn't just a weapon, it's a symbol of Final Fantasy VII's soul. According to Hamaguchi, if that sword had been turned into something smaller, more ordinary, and more logical, players would never have accepted it. So the team stayed faithful to the original design, and the result speaks for itself. Even a new generation of players fell in love with Cloud and the Buster Sword from day one. This decision perfectly explains why the team is so careful about cutting content in Part 3. This philosophy is key to understanding Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 as a whole, because across all of Hamaguchi's interviews, one thing remains consistent. This project is not being rushed. He makes it very clear that the third game is the finale of the trilogy, and because of that, it can't be delivered with a good enough mindset. In fact, he says the game is finally starting to align with the vision he's had in his head, that they're now approaching the Final Fantasy VII experience he truly imagined. That's a major milestone in development. Hamaguchi also stresses that the trilogy was never designed to deliver the same experience 3 times. Remake defined what this project was. Rebirth expanded that foundation with open areas and a stronger sense of scale. Part 3, however, has to move to an entirely different level. That means the third game won't just be a bigger version of the previous 2. It aims to deliver a fundamentally new experience. At this point, one keyword keeps coming up again and again: Highwind. Hamaguchi says that a new experience and a new sense of scale are essential for Part 3's success, and Highwind sits at the center of that evolution. Anyone who played the original Final Fantasy VII knows that Highwind wasn't just an airship, it completely changed how you perceived the world. Seeing the map from above, freely traveling between continents, and feeling the true size of the world gave the final act of the game a completely different spirit. That's why placing Highwind at the center of Part 3 strongly suggests a massive expansion in scale. This isn't just about adding a new vehicle, it means reshaping storytelling, quest design, and world structure around that freedom. A large part of what Hamaguchi calls a new experience likely comes from here. A Final Fantasy VII where players aren't confined to Midgar or isolated regions, but can truly feel the world as a whole. Another important detail is the current state of development. Hamaguchi says Part 3 is already playable and that the core game experience is nearly complete. Right now, the team isn't building systems from scratch, they're refining, expanding, and polishing what already exists. This shows that while the game still has a long road ahead, its foundation is solid. It's not a project drifting in uncertainty, but one moving toward a clear goal. This also gives new meaning to Hamaguchi's comments about pacing. He repeatedly emphasizes that making the story more fluid does not mean cutting content. The goal is to prevent players from feeling, "Why am I still here?" as the story progresses. The tempo needs to be adjusted in a way that preserves the impact of dramatic moments. Considering this is the finale of the trilogy, that balance becomes even more critical. According to Hamaguchi, many pacing complaints about Rebirth stem not from the game itself, but from modern player habits. Today, players juggle multiple massive games at once, which increases impatience. He believes a story-driven experience like Final Fantasy VII cannot fully surrender to that trend. The power of Final Fantasy VII comes from letting players truly absorb what the characters go through, not from rushing events to the finish line. That's why the pacing goal for Part 3 isn't shorter, but more accurate. The story will move forward, but key moments will never be glossed over. Cloud's mental struggles, Sephiroth's influence, and world-defining events are scenes the player needs to truly feel. From Hamaguchi's comments, it's clear the final game aims to deliver a clearer flow without sacrificing emotional weight. When you put all of this together, it becomes easier to understand why Part 3 has been in development for so long. Square Enix doesn't see this as just another sequel, but as the piece that gives meaning to the entire trilogy. That's why they want to minimize mistakes on both technical and narrative levels. Hamaguchi's comment, "I want you to play it as soon as possible, but please wait a little longer," perfectly captures that mindset. In short, we now have a very clear picture. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 is not shrinking, not being rushed, and not losing its soul. On the contrary, the series has been carefully built step by step, and now it's preparing for its biggest, boldest, and most distinct chapter yet. A world expanded through Highwind, carefully balanced pacing, and a story that moves forward without cutting content, all aim to make this finale truly unforgettable. With everything we know, it's safe to say that Part 3 isn't just a third game. It's the final destination of a vision that's been built piece by piece over many years. Remake laid the foundation, Rebirth expanded the world, and now Part 3 aims for the peak both narratively and mechanically. Hamaguchi's words make it clear this won't be a rushed or obligatory ending. The focus on Highwind especially signals that the Final Fantasy VII universe will finally be experienced on a truly global scale. This means players won't just watch the story unfold, they'll feel like part of the world itself. Just as Highwind changed how the original game was perceived, Part 3 aims to create a similar turning point. That's exactly the kind of transformation a finale like this deserves. The confirmation that content won't be cut is perhaps the most reassuring detail for fans. Final Fantasy VII has always drawn its strength from its characters, emotional weight, and narrative depth. Hamaguchi's repeated emphasis on this shows Square Enix doesn't want to risk that legacy. While the pacing will be refined, the heart of the story will remain intact. It's also encouraging that development has reached a stage where the vision and execution are finally aligned. The game isn't finished yet, but the question of what kind of game will this be has largely been answered. From here on, it's about polishing that strong foundation and making the finale truly memorable. Before we wrap up, I want to repeat this once more. YouTube's algorithm isn't working the way it used to, and videos don't reach as many people as they deserve. If you enjoy this kind of content, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Your comments help the video reach more people and give me the motivation to keep making these videos. What do you think about Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3? Do you think a Highwind-centered scale will make the game legendary, or is the hype getting too high? Make sure to share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for your support. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.